Hey, Easy Agent Pros. This is Tyler with Easy Agent Pro, and today on the line I have Kyle Hiscock from Rochester, New York. We're just going to talk about real estate blogging and social media and SEO and his take on it, what he does to succeed at it, and some of the things that he's seeing in the industry and online that maybe you can implement into your marketing strategy in 2016 and beyond, and maybe sort of expand what you're doing. So welcome to the show, Kyle.
Tyler, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to sharing some information and some insight.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. So yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself to everyone, maybe explain when you started blogging for real estate, when you got into real estate, and things like that.
Yep, no, absolutely. I have been selling real estate. It'll be 5 years this February, in about a couple weeks here. I'm based in Rochester, New York, which is western part of New York. I cover about a 30-40 mile radius around center of Rochester. I've been blogging actively since the end of 2013, and haven't turned back since I started. I've seen some great results, and I'm looking forward to kind of giving you some insight into why and how and all that fun stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So 2013. That's sort of at the frontier of blogging and real estate. I don't think many people beat you in terms of when they got started. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Let's get into that then. So I've read your blog. Obviously, you write a lot of stuff. But how do you determine what topics to write about? What do you think people will find interesting? What gets shared? Like how do you determine what you're going to write about on any given day or week?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that quite a bit. The first thing that I'm always try to keep in mind as I'm going through my day-to-day schedule and operations is I'm always listening to questions I'm being asked from buyers, from sellers, from other realtors, to try to kind of get some ideas as far as what are the hot topics that are currently being asked right now in the industry. I know last year, for a portion of the year, there was a pretty controversial topic was Zillow's estimates. I know they're still out there, and that was actually an article that I ended up writing a little bit about the Zillow's estimates and the accuracy and intricacies of it. So really, the best way I find, and my number one way I determine what topics to write about, are really listening to consumers, but also other agents. And then, of course, secondary to that, I always monitor what topics seem to rate better with sharing and conversation on social media with other agents and buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I remember that. Zillow estimates were all over the news last year. So you did a consumer ask you, or is that one that you sort of saw online and thought you could add your 2 cents to that? How'd that one specifically happen?
Well, actually, I was sitting down with a seller in one of the bedroom communities of Rochester, Webster, New York, and the seller was asking me, because I went over a market analysis and gave him an idea of where I really thought the house needed to be listed as far as pricing. And one of their questions was, well, I looked at Zillow, and Zillow said my house is worth $200,000, not $175,000, like you're indicating from your market analysis. So it kind of sparked some interest in my eyes, and I kind of went onto Zillow and looked at some other estimates in addition to this specific property, and noticed that really they're all over the place. Some are lower than homes are worth, some are higher, some are right on. So it really made me want to think and look into it a little bit more and see if it was specific to just one address or if it was happening all across the board, and that's kind of what spurred on that article, and it was actually very, very well received.
Yeah, I actually found it while you were talking about it, and this is amazing. You should go look at this if you're listening to this, but basically you outlined, it looks like 50 houses here. I don't know, I can't count them that fast, but these houses are off this estimate from the actual sale price by anywhere from $8,000 to some of your higher ones are closer to 40. That's That's amazing. I had no idea. That's great. So like that's a really good blog post, and I'm sure people would agree with that. But like, what's that do for you then? Is it something you show your buyers or your sellers? How do you use this maybe with your buyers or sellers?
Yeah, I mean, I one of the biggest things I use that article for is just awareness. I like to explain to both buyers and sellers that certainly, sites, third-party sites like Zillow and Trulia, they do offer some good tools, and there's no doubt about that. However, you have to be very cautious with the information you're getting, especially when it comes to the local market. And the biggest thing I always indicate and mention to them is, I'm a real estate agent in Rochester, New York. The people or the computer system or algorithm that's computing this specific home's value is not located in Rochester, New York. So it's one of those things where it's, for a ballpark, I suppose it could be useful, but in reality, I always like to mention and keep buyers and sellers always aware of it, front of mind is, what they see on different websites for values and things like that aren't always necessarily the truth or what's going on in the local market, which I think is huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm on this blog article right now, and you have 929 shares on it. That's incredible. Like, obviously, you don't just publish it and then get 900 shares. Like, what's your system, or what do you do after you publish an article? Like, what's next?
Well, that's a great question, Tyler. I mean, the biggest mistake that I see real estate professionals who begin blogging and subsequently end up giving up on their blogs very shortly after is they click the publish button and they walk away, thinking that it's going to reach the masses, it's going to reach thousands of people, they're going to get all sorts of shares all over Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest. But the reality is, publishing and writing the content is really just half of the battle. Once I finish writing an article and I publish it when it goes live, really that's about half the work. Then, I mean, from there, the internet, there's endless opportunities to get your content noticed online. I do a ton of curating of my content. I use a lot of great websites that provide very user-friendly tools and ways to curate your content and share it. Just to give you a few examples, I use a lot of web pages like Bundler, Listly. Of course, I share it all over social media, Google+, LinkedIn, Pinterest. And really, it's just, again, it's about getting the information out in front of people, not only other realtors, but also, hopefully the goal at the end of the day is to get it in front of potential buyers and sellers in your local market.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. Obviously, you can do that when you get it up to 900. So is there any social network that's your favorite, or do you just kind of hit them all? Is there any sort of strategy you have there?
I guess I'd like to. Can I answer that in two different ways?
Yeah, let's break that down in two different ways. Yeah.
Okay. My favorite social site for interaction and conversation and really good dialogue for real estate would be Google+. I find that the professionals and the people that you interact with in the communities on Google+ are really more interacting. They're not as much I guess you say self-centered or always posting about listings. You see that a lot on Facebook and some other social sites where agents are just consistently blasting their newest listing, or that they just sold this or just sold that. I find on Google+ that there's a lot of conversation and interaction, which at the day's end really can help agents as a whole grow together and learn about different things, whether it's real estate related topics or social media or SEO tips or whatever it may be. As far as my favorite platform for sharing and kind of finding good articles and content, I'd have to say it would be Twitter. I find a ton of great content from not only realtors on Twitter and other real estate agents, but also SEO and social media tips. I love Twitter. I mean, that's I'm constantly on my phone on Twitter, checking out what's on the new what's the newest what news tweets are coming out, and certainly again, social media is about being social, so I'm making sure that I'm retweeting other people's tweets that I find interesting, and certainly answering if I get any mentions or responses to any of my tweets, certainly answering those and trying to stay active, because Twitter, that's extremely important to be successful on Twitter.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty. I really like Twitter because you can always find someone talking about something. I think some of the more interesting conversations or nuanced ones typically happen there. And then on Google Depth, Google Plus, you do get that depth where it's maybe a smaller community, but it's better because it's smaller and there isn't as much going on. So you get more of that engagement. That's really cool. But I mean, I guess that can be an intimidating thing. Like you started in 2013, so you've been living with this for 2.5, 3 years now. What suggestions would you make for someone who's maybe just starting out on social, doesn't know exactly where it will benefit them, or where it will grow the traffic to their site, or how that might turn into leads? What would you, or even clients doing more business with them because they stay in touch longer, what would you suggest to someone who is just starting out and maybe they have a Facebook and their Google Plus and Twitter they haven't touched since they set it up in 2010 or something?
Oh, it's a great question. I mean, the biggest suggestion I can make for people, other realtors just starting out in social media is to be social. Honestly, that it sounds silly that it's that simple, but social media is not all about you. It's about interacting with other professionals, buyers, sellers. For the most part, buyers and sellers aren't going to Facebook to find their next home. It's just not the reality. I mean, the key with social media is being social and sharing information that people, not only buyers and sellers, but other real estate agents, are going to find useful and helpful for their business. So the biggest thing I can really suggest is dive in and just be social. Start interacting with some of the industry leaders. Start trying to find out who the influencers are on the specific platform. And that's as simple as doing Google searches, who to follow on Twitter for real estate, who to follow on Pinterest for real estate. And you're going to find some excellent professionals that are doing it right and seeing huge results. Because, again, if you do it right, there's no doubt that it can yield huge results in traffic, as well as hopefully at some point leads.
Yeah, exactly. So you talk about being social on social media, and one of the things that I see a lot and think about a lot, even in Easy Agent Pro, and I think you might be a good person to answer this. How do you balance this whole Google versus social media thing? How do you do SEO and then or try to get ranked on Google, and then versus writing something that maybe will go over well on social media? Do you write different blogs for different things, or do you just write a blog and know that they'll probably rank well on Google and then just focus on social media? Do you prefer one over the other? What's your take on that situation, I guess?
I think social media and SEO, they really need to be paired together to be powerful either way you look at it. Without one or the other, I truly believe that it's not going to work as well as it could. If you have both SEO and social media working together, it can be a really powerful tool. Typically when I write a blog article, which I traditionally will post one major article a week on my site, typically on Tuesday mornings, I'm more looking at it from the perspective that I need to put something that's going to get me to the top of page number one. And one of the best ways to do that is to beat everybody else who's already there with the specific topic you're writing about. For example, if you are writing an article on how to sell a luxury home, if you do a Google search of that, you're going to find the top 10 people who have written articles or top websites that have written articles. You need to make sure that your article and content and the information you're providing is better than those 10 to have any chance to get up onto the first page. Certainly, one huge impact on SEO is social sharing. Google and the search engines, they look at a piece of content that's been shared 4,000 times versus one that's only been shared half a dozen. They look at that as a more valuable piece of content or a more consumer-friendly piece of content. So they're gonna give a little bit more weight to that article that's been shared 4,000 times than the one that's only been shared half a dozen.
Yeah, that's awesome. So and that's what we found at Easy Agent Pro too. Whether it's real estate or what we write or what agents are doing, you get those Google results when you also get those social media results. You really can't. It's hard to separate them. Google Plus is a social. Everything that goes over well there is going to probably rank well. Essentially, that's cool. Do you have any tricks for getting more social shares? I see you reference a lot of people and have sources in a lot of your posts. Does that help?
Yeah, that definitely helps. I mean, one of the biggest things people on real estate agents or anything really, and bloggers, social media people, they love to see their name in the spotlight. So anytime you can include, again, it has to be, you can't just include a bunch of people with a bunch of links to their content because you want to get more social shares. It needs to be a quality piece of content that you're including in yours. Certainly, if you're writing an article on how to sell a luxury home, and you've found another article that talks about a quality article that's really detailed and thorough about luxury home photography and real estate. It might be something you want to link in your site because, again, you're not only adding value to the people who are reading your article because they can click and find out about the type of photography that should be expected with luxury homes, but also you're going to, hopefully, when you share it on your social sites, you're going to tag that person and let them know that you've included a link back to their site, to their article. So it kind of works twofold, that if you include others, and again, it has to be, I never would suggest just creating an article and including just a bunch of links to people because that certainly doesn't help your own site. But if you create an article with some quality links to other people and it fits the topic that you're writing about, then certainly that can help with your sharing because the hope is that if they see that you've tagged them in the article, they're going to share it on their Twitter, their Pinterest, their Facebook, their social media sites.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a great way of explaining that. You can't really. Everyone looks for ways to skip on the quality, but I mean, even your Zillow post here, the quality is just. It's just you're showing people, whether it's people buying or selling or whether it's other agents, how they're off by thousands and thousands of dollars almost every time on this estimate. That's just a quality article, but then if you link to maybe a couple other resources, then those people might share it, and that'll lead to more people sharing it, and you can pretty quickly see how you could get up to that a couple hundred shares, or in this case it looks like you got close to 900 shares. So that's really cool. What's your posting schedule then for that? It's probably different on Twitter, Google Plus, Facebook. Do you have a specific schedule, or do you just share? Why don't you tell us what you do on social?
Yeah, every socials, I know you guys at Easy Agent Pro have talked about it before. Is every social site has different demographics, different times when they're more active. The biggest thing before I even get into my social schedule is I would suggest that you find where the top real estate groups are on the specific social media sites. So, for example, there's a ton of communities on Google Plus, but a few of them are very active. I'm actually a moderator in the second largest Google Plus real estate group.
Wow.
And that's just one example. I mean, LinkedIn has a ton of real estate related groups. Facebook has a ton of real estate related groups. So first thing I would say is get involved in those as much as you can. As far as the scheduling or the sharing schedule for my posts, typically the first thing is I find that Google Plus is a little bit more active in the morning, probably because it's more filled with professionals, other real estate agents who typically during the morning are at their computer checking emails, cleaning up things from maybe the previous day they didn't get to the previous day, and they're able to see what I'm sharing versus something like Facebook, where traditionally I find that if I share something later in the afternoon or even evening, I'm catching more viewership than I would if I was to post it during the middle of the day when the majority of people are either out, not only real estate agents showing houses, but when buyers and sellers are likely working their job. So, and then certainly, again, Pinterest is another one that they have a ton of great group boards there, and I'm consistently sharing it on the different boards, but not all at once, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see happening on social media is people will publish an article and they'll go into all these groups and they'll share it as fast as they can and then again walk away. But like any social site, like Twitter, like Google Plus, it's the news feed on any of your followers' pages are set typically to show it in chronological order. So if you share a post to a ton of Pinterest groups, and then by the time one of your followers gets onto Pinterest later on in the day, your post could already be buried hundreds and hundreds of pins down. So at that point, they may miss it. So that's one of my biggest suggestions is just don't publish something and go blast it all over every social site and every group as fast as you can. Kind of spread it out throughout the day if you can.
That's cool. That's actually a really good tip. I don't think we talked about that as much before, but you really do have to spread that out a lot. That's great. Lots of tips. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are writing notes or taking stuff down and trying to like adjust what they're doing. Like, it's a process, though. I mean, I know this. I'm sure you would agree that the things we're doing today will be different in 6 months because that's how fast the internet changes. Like, what over the course of the 2.5, 3 years you've been doing this has been like the biggest thing that you've come to realize, or maybe the thing you misunderstood when you got into it, that you'd like other people to know now? Is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got active into social media a couple of years ago, the biggest mistake I found myself making is, again, it was posting all about me, publishing my art, my newest listings, publishing about my most recent sales, and again, that's not what it's about if you want to be successful on social media. But I do see that more and more, and I guess unless you know that that's not the right way to do it or the way that you can build a following on social media, then you don't know any better. So that's my biggest misunderstanding from the beginning, but certainly would be my biggest suggestion to avoid is making it a me channel. I call it a me channel, a me.
Right. So you share other real estate agents' blogs, or you share other, like on Facebook, maybe you share some news article from a local news story, or what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's my biggest thing for social media for trying to kind of build is to really try to build credibility with potential buyers and sellers. I want to be able to be the person that's front of mind when the time comes to buy or sell a house. The way I find a great way to do that is share information that they will find helpful or they'll read. For example, if you're sharing tips on how to sell a home with children or with kids, you may reach somebody who's not right at this current moment in time in the position or ready to sell their home, but in 6 months from now, if the time comes and they've read half a dozen articles that I've shared, whether they're my own or other agents or other quality content, they will hopefully remember, in most cases they do, who is sharing the quality information, because you look like you're the expert in the field.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a great I hope people write that down. It's actually really interesting that people, even if it's not your own article, that they still attribute the knowledge that they learn or take away from that article that may not even been your own to you because you're the person that shared it with them. It's a great way to look at it. Quick before we sort of wrap up, how has this impacted your business? It's obviously something that helps you, grow your business either through leads or through relationships with clients. How has this, helped you grow your real estate business over the years?
Yeah, my website is it's I call it my hub for my business. It truly is the engine that makes my business run. Everything is centered around my webpage as far as lead generation, exposure for my sellers' homes, information portal for my buyer clients or potential buyers. It truly is. It can be a game changer if it's done correctly. And again, it's an ever-growing process, and it's not something that happens overnight. And I've seen over the course of the past 2 years some substantial growth in not only the traffic but also leads and lead conversion. Certainly, my Easy Agent Pro webpage has been a huge factor in that in the last several months, getting additional leads. So definitely the amount of traffic has increased, and it continues to increase year over year. I think I looked in the last 30 days in comparison from 2015. I think my traffic's up about 400% from
Wow.
year over year. So if
That's
it's
awesome.
done right, if I look at that from month to month, from when this month's over here into January 2015, it'll be somewhere between 350 and 400% growth from year over year. So it just takes time, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I can't stress enough is that it does take time, and to stay patient and stay the course and believe that what you're doing is working, because it will work.
Yeah, well, that sounds like marching orders to every agent out there. So I think this would be a great time to wrap up. Thanks for your time and tips, Kyle, and we'll all see you on social media.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I appreciate you having me, and we'll see you soon over on all the social channels.
All right. Talk to you later.